G'day, Michael from ironbarkgamesstudio, and welcome to the 13th part of this tutorial series, which will be the creation of an animated walk cycle using the knowledge of keyframe animation from the previous part. So probably the most common character animation is a walk cycle, and also a run cycle. This is actually going to be a very short cycle of about 24 frames, or 1 second. Of course, this could be extended or shortened, depending on how fast you want the character to walk. Jumping into Blender. Where we left off last time is we had two idle animations. So if we check our actions here, we've got idle 1 and idle 2. So idle 2 was the bit more complex one, where our character folds their arms, looks to the side, and then looks back. Whilst the idle 1 was just a very basic, subtle motion. For our walk cycle, we're going to create a new action. So I'm going to click on the X next to my actions here, and then I'm going to create a new action. And I'm going to call this one walk. Of course, I want to make sure to click on the fake user icon. So if I just open up this tab, we can see that we've got Fs next to idle 1 and idle 2, which means those two animations are saved. If we click on the fake user next to walk, that one's also going to be saved if it ever becomes unlinked like the idle ones are. I'm going to grab my rig here, go into pose mode, Control Tab, press A to select all of the controllers, and hit Alt R and Alt G to reset the rotation and location of them. For the major poses of a walk cycle, we're going to create a contact pose, a down pose, passing, and then up poses. And then we're going to repeat those for the opposite leg. And of course, we can just copy and paste what we've already done. So we only need to animate one side, so that's going to be 12 frames. So working on the contact pose, I'm going to press Ctrl 3 to go to my side view here. And I want the right foot to be forward, so G and Y. We can see though that as we move it up, the foot is sort of detaching from the controllers, and that's because we don't have enough length in the leg because of how high up it is. So we'll just grab the hips and we'll press G, Z to bring them down on the Z axis. Going to grab this controller here, going to rotate it up so that the leg is fairly straight and that the toes are pointing up at an angle in the air. And then for the left foot, we're going to bring this back on the Y. And we want to rotate it up so that the toes are in contact with the ground. So we'll grab our foot roll bone here and we'll rotate that up like so. We might even want to grab the hips and pull them up, and maybe this front leg goes back. We never want the leg to be completely straight. This gives us an effect called knee pop, where the knee sort of pops out like that. So we always want to make sure that there's a little bit of bend in the knees. We'll go to the front view and move the arms down by the sides of the character. Then we'll go back to the side view, Control 3 on the numpad. So the opposite arm will be forward from the opposite leg. Okay, we're just going to leave it at that for now. We're going to keep it nice and simple to start off with. So we're going to press A to select all the keyframes and press I to key them. Our animation is going to be 1 second long for 24 frames. So let's go to the 25th frame here. And we'll just set our animation length to 24 frames. So remembering that we want to make sure that the last keyframe is not shown because that's going to overlap with the first keyframe. Let's select these keyframes at the start, Shift D to duplicate, and then move them across to frame 25 so that the start and end frames are identical. I'm then going to move to frame 13, so in the middle between 1 and 25. I'm going to have all of my controllers selected. I'm going to hit Control C and then Shift Control V to paste the inverse pose. I can then press I, and that's going to keyframe them all in. So frame 13 is identical to frame 1, with the exception that it is flipped, and then keyframe 1 is identical to keyframe 25. So instead of playing the frames with Bezier interpolation, I'm going to press A to select all of my keyframes, press T, and change the interpolation to constant, so that now when I play through my animation, it's just going to flip to the key poses, it's not going to interpolate between them. So now we need to create the down, passing, and up poses. So we're going to go to frame 4, which is going to be our down pose. Press Ctrl 3 to go to the side view. Going to grab the hips. Going to move them down a little bit. And I'm going to go Alt-R to reset the rotation of the foot. And I'll grab the hips down a little bit more. And I'll select the foot roll on the left foot, and then Alt-R to reset it. And just rotate the whole foot backwards. And make it so that it's on the toe. And just move the leg back a little bit there. Might be a little bit too far down, so I'll just grab them up. Again, just making sure we don't create a knee pop in there. We can select all of that. Press A and then I to set the keyframe in there. We might also want to actually rotate the character forward a little bit as well. Let's rotate the hips just a bit. And then press I to keyframe the hips. Then for our passing pose, this right foot here, it's going to be moving back on the Y. The hips are going to be up higher. And that left foot is going to be coming forward and rotated backwards. And we did actually want to do this on frame 7, but if I move the timeline now, I'm going to lose the pose. So I'm just going to go Control C, and I'll move it to frame 7 and see we've lost the pose now. But then I can just go Control V, and we've got it back here. And I'll just press I to keyframe that in. And then on frame 10, this is our last one here, this is our up pose. The right foot is going to be a little further back. We're going to rotate it onto the toe. Like that. And then the left foot is going to be coming forward. And I do also want the hands to be coming through as well, which I've been neglecting on the other frames, but I'll come back and fix them up. Select everything, I to keyframe. So we don't need to create the poses on the other side, we can just copy and paste these here. So I'll go to frame 4, going to select, make sure all of the controls are selected with A, Control C to copy them. Go to frame 16, and then go Shift Control V to paste the inverse. Press I to add the keyframe. Frame 7, make sure all the controls are selected. Control C. Go to frame 19. Shift Control V. I. Go to frame 10. Control C. Go to frame 22. Shift Control V. I to paste the inverse. So now if we press space, we should see the walk cycle in a sort of stop motion animation here. So obviously we want to smooth this animation out now. So I'm just going to stop it playing. Press A to select all the keyframes. Press A to select all of the keyframes in the action editor. T, and then set the interpolation to Bezier. And now if we play it, it's going to be smooth. And we can see, because I neglected to keyframe the arms moving in some of those frames, it's looking pretty janky, but the legs, they're looking pretty smooth there. So one thing I'm going to add before I start cleaning this up is a floor to the scene. So Control Tab to get out of pose mode, Shift A, and I'm going to add a plane to the scene. And that's just going to act as our floor so that we can see if the feet are going to be clipping through the floor at all. I'll select my rig again, make sure I'm in the action editor, Control Tab to go back into pose mode, and now I can start refining the animation. And this is going to be different for each walk cycle animation. From here, here's just some tips to try to get some smoother animation. So don't let a leg become completely straight. otherwise that's going to create knee pop. So like I said before, if I grab these hips and brought them up, we can see that left leg has a knee pop, and so that right leg, if I bring it up too much, it's also going to create a bit of a jitter in the timeline as well. We want to avoid adding keyframes directly after each other, so we always want Blender to interpolate between some of the keyframes. If there's no interpolation, that's when we can get some jittery or jumping motion as well. And that's the same thing too as having a controller in a similar position over multiple frames. It's going to look like the controller is sort of stuck or frozen in that position for a small period of time. So that's sort of what's happening with the hands here. They're just sort of stuck because they have the exact same keyframes there. So let's fix the hands up now, because that's getting a little annoying. So let's do the right hand first. And I'm basically just going to delete some of the keyframes in here. So keyframes on 7 and 4, just going to delete those. And it's sort of stuck in here between keyframes 19, these three as well, I think. All 4. I think it's these ones that are sort of freezing it. Okay, so 10, 16, 19, and 22, I'm going to delete those as well. Okay, that's just looking smoother there. Do the same with the other side as well. Let's just delete these keyframes on the inside there. So leave the ones at 13, 1, and 25. Alright, that's looking a lot smoother. And one other thing too is that the hips, I didn't rotate them at frame 1 or 25. So let's just go into the side view, just rotate them like that. Copy that, paste it there, paste it there. Alright. So things I immediately see is frames 7 and 10. The hips are pretty much in the same position, and be the same on the other side, so 19 and 22. So I want to make sure that the hips are always moving. We don't want controllers in the same position for too long. So in frame 10, the hips should actually be in a slightly higher position than 7. So in 7, maybe we'll just grab them down a little bit. And then 10, maybe even grab it up just slightly. Copy that, paste that on frame 19. Copy 10, paste that on frame 22. And that's looking better with the up and down hips motion there. There's not too much more I want to change with this sort of base motion, so I can start adding in some secondary motion now. So for secondary motion, I'll do a little bit of a head bob. So we want the head to sort of move forward just a little bit as the foot hits the ground. So as the foot makes contact, we sort of want the head to come down a little bit. It's a little bit too extreme there. And I might even just delete keyframe in between them. Copy that, paste in the middle of that one over there, and delete these outside keyframes. Just got a little bit of a head movement as the sort of feet hits the ground or just afterwards. I want to add a little bit of motion to the hips as the leading leg comes forward. I want the hips to rotate in that direction. So on frame 1, I'm going to rotate the hips on the Z like that. Copy frame 1, paste it on frame 25, and Shift Control V to paste the inverse we'll need to copy that on frame 25 and then paste the inverse frame 13. And frame 4, again, we want the hips to be rotated for that leading leg. I duplicate that across to frame, what is that, 16 there. That's going to be the inverse, so Control C, Shift Control V, and then I. It's looking a little bit sort of janky in that middle bit, so we'll need a little bit more rotation. As that leading foot comes forward, we want it rotating in that direction as well. That'll be on frame 19 there, so Control C there. And then paste that on frame 22, Shift Control V, I. It's looking a little bit unnatural, so we want the chest to counter-rotate with the hips. Add a keyframe there, copy that across to the last keyframe, copy that, and then go Shift Control V, frame 13. It's looking a little bit janky there, so we're just going to delete the keyframes in between. I want a little bit of counter rotation in the hands, so that sort of lag behind the arms a little bit during the walk cycle. And I won't delete the keyframes in between for the spine rotation, sort of have the character rotate forward a little bit as they walk. And then rotate back a little bit on that spine just before they make contact with the ground. Just going to get a little bit more motion in the body there. And I think I'm going to leave it there for the animation. So again, obviously we could do more cleanup, refine this a little bit more, add a little bit more of a specific style to a character's walk. But for now, we're going to leave it as it is. We have a functioning walk cycle. So that's the fundamentals of animation done. References are absolutely key for creating complex animation cycles, and a lot of the time you will need to create variations on walk and run cycles. For example, if a character can move forwards, backwards, strafe left and right, already you need 4 different animation cycles just for walking. So keep that in mind when you're creating your character controllers for games. The next couple of tutorials will cover how to get your animated character into either Unity or Unreal. There are a few little nuances in the export and import settings, specifically around the armature, but we will also cover how to set up the textures and materials in the game engines as well. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful. You can check out our Patreon link in the description for a variety of rewards such as starting files, tutorial notes, and early access to the rest of the series. And I'll see you in the next one.